English 121, Day 15, The Mechanics of Quoting from the Allen and Bacon Guide. When quoting or paraphrasing from a source, be sure to include attributive tags such as Lehrer states or the authors argue in order to distinguish the original writer's prose from your own. When you want to quote a complete sentence from a source, begin the passage with a capital letter and separate the quote from the attributive tag using a comma. Here we see that the period is included before the final quotation marks. When quoting a brief word or a short phrase from a source and working that into your own grammatical structure, simply use signal phrases to insert the passage smoothly. See here that no comma is needed to introduce the sentence unless it is used to fit the grammar of the writer's own sentence. Also be sure to always use present tense to discuss source material. Use brackets to modify any quotations if the grammar of the passage doesn't match the grammar of your own sentence, or if the meaning of the quoted word is not clear because the passage has been removed from its original context. The change inside the brackets modifies the quotation to fit the grammar of the writer's original sentence, or makes it make sense out of context. In the original passage, a pronoun was used to refer to the drug torcetrapib. However, any reader who was not familiar with the original text would not be able to decipher what it was in that case. And so here I have replaced the pronoun with the proper noun. Also use brackets for changes in capitalization. In the original sentence, this wasn't the beginning of the sentence, and so it was a lowercase a, but because I've made it the beginning of the sentence, the a needs to be made uppercase, and because that's a change from the original, it needs to go in brackets. Insert ellipses, or three-spaced periods, to indicate omitted words from a quoted passage. When using ellipses in the middle of a sentence, you do not need to include a space between each of the periods, but each of the periods should be preceded and followed with a space. Microsoft Word will space them out evenly for you. If your quotation occurs at the end of the sentence, you'll need to use an additional period to mark the end of the sentence. However, if you have a parenthetical citation, the terminal period still comes after the parenthetical, not up here, but rather at the very end of the sentence. If you wish to quote a passage that already contains quotation marks, change the original double quotes to single quotes. Here we have the original double quotes, followed by single quotes. The same rule will apply whether the quotation is within the sentence, as we see here, single quotes separating the original quoted material, or if it were a title. So if this title were part of the larger quotation, then I would give that single quotes. However, be sure to use attributive tags to signal who is quoted within the quote. So this shows that it's the secondary source, and here we have an author tag for the original source. Finally, if your quoted passage takes up more than 4 lines in your own work, use the block indentation method rather than quotation marks, which we see here. So you have your original text, which is double-spaced, the indented text, an extra ½ inch, single-spaced, no quotation marks, and an author tag after the terminal period. Let's take a look at that again. Here's a quote from Michael Pollan. Be sure to introduce the block with the sentence in your own writing that includes an attributive tag, followed by a colon, not a comma, a colon. Then, indent the quoted material 1 inch and single space the quoted text. There are no quotation marks necessary at the beginning or end of the quoted material because it is already indented. Finally, the parenthetical citation comes after the terminal period. This is the only place where your parenthetical will come after the period. Block text is used primarily in cases where the writer intends to analyze a large chunk of text being quoted, so don't use this method too frequently, as it can allow your writing to become overrun with other people's voices, and you want to be framing most of the material through your own voice and working quotes into your writing in a grammatically correct way.